A sower went out to sow seeds in the field. Some seeds fell on rocky ground, and they were scorched. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns choked them. And some fell on good soil and produced grain. And Jesus taught them, saying, "If a man has 100 sheep, and one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 in the mountains and go in search of the one that went astray? So it is not the will of my Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish." The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who, upon finding one pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it.
Hey, good morning. How are we? All right, great. Hey, my name's RD, and I have a mustache. Yes. Let us pray and dismiss. That is enough this morning. I've had people ask me, they have said, do you feel better than other people now that you have a mustache? And I just want to make it clear, I have not said this. Other people have said this to me, right? I have not disagreed with this. I have not pushed back on that theory. I don't want you to think your pastor is lying about that. But others have said it, of course. Many, who even can count how many have said it to me over the past couple of weeks. And in my journey I see a good mustache right there. There's my man. Who else has a mustache in here? Anybody else have a mustache in here? No, over here. Signs of faith in this. Oh, I know you do now. I saw that picture. Yes, looking good. My man, right there. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of it. I'm, some scholars think that Jesus, he may have, some scholars, right? When you go to college, you meet professors like this who say these things. And, so I'm just now, as Rick might say, kind of reframing my theology of Jesus' facial hair. That's what I'm doing. I'm just going to kind of think this. Sorry, Amy, that's too far. Okay, hey, I also want to welcome the kids here this morning. If you're a kid, hey, raise your hand. If you're a kid, raise your hand. Hey, glad you're here. Glad you're here. I see those hands. Hey, glad you guys are here. And it's great you're here because the title of my message, which was supposed to be last week, but was pushed to this week for things beyond my control because of a toilet on it. Doesn't matter why. I'm here now, and I've worked through it. The title of the message this morning is Childlike versus Cynical Faith. Childlike versus cynical faith. And one of my theories that I hope will be true this morning in a room with kids now is that kids are, they can be this, I know sometimes. I have 3 of them who I love. But they are not ultimately this. They're not nuisances, right? In the eyes of Jesus, they're teachers. They teach us. That's what kids do. They teach us. And so this morning, I hope that the text will show us what maybe the kid next to you knows far more than you do about Jesus. That's my hope. So let's see where we get and how far it goes. And then at some point, we'll just end, okay? Last night, I was in bed with my 3-year-old, Leela, and we're reading this little book from Tiny Theologians called Does God Sleep? And she just is not understanding how God cannot sleep. And I said to her, God does not sleep. And she's like, I did not know this about God. He did not sleep. So when did he must be so tired. This is honestly how she speaks. And then I start speaking like her as well. It's like, he no need to sleep, right? And then this becomes like, you know it if you're a parent, you know it. And if you're a kid, you're like, that you sound like my parent. Yes, we all speak the same way after a while. And so then, like, he does not need to sleep. He's so strong. And then she goes, strong like you? I was like, well, yes, strong like me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sweet daughter, right? Thank you. She's like, can he lift our house? I was like, I think, yeah, he could lift our house. She's like, I did not know he could lift our house. He is amazing. I was like, he is amazing. That's so right. Like, he could lift our house. He doesn't need to sleep. Then she goes, what can God not do? I was like, God, I don't know the last time that I've really even thought that with that genuine faith. That my 3-year-old, who's not a Christian, in that moment just expressed something more true than I think in sometimes the low-grade cynicism that life just creates around your soul, where you just want to couch it and say, yeah, of course God can do anything, but he doesn't usually do a lot of things. Where Leela just says, what can God not do? That's faith. That's what faith is. Faith is a belief that God is able to do what he said he will do and that he's good, that he's powerful and that he's trustworthy. And it comes from the child within us all, which is at the heart of faith. And we're going to look at a passage this morning in Matthew that's going to talk about it. But first, I want to go to the famous passage here on faith, Hebrews 11:1. The writer of Hebrews says this, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. That's what faith is. It's assurance and conviction, right? It's the AC of our life, right? It's what we need. It is what we need. It's assurance of things hoped for, and it's conviction of things not seen. It's not blind. It's not simple believism. It's not this kind of emptying out of your mind. That's not what faith is. Faith is conviction and assurance of both things that you have seen with God and the things you know you will see again. That's what faith is. It's trusting in the ability of God and the goodness of God. That's what faith is, and it's a muscle. It can grow. God gives us initiating faith. He does that. We don't do that. But then God says, you can grow your faith. Your faith can be bigger today than it was a year ago, and I hope your faith is. It should be. It must be. Faith is trust. It's belief in God. It's what God is looking for. It's what he's always been looking for. In 2 Chronicles 16:9, one of my favorite verses, right? It says, for the eyes of the Lord reigns throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. What a verse. God, this is still present day reality. Every single morning, God's eyes just searching back and forth throughout the earth to strengthen those people with faith, with belief. It's what Jesus is looking for. And in fact, it's one of the most important things he's looking for upon his return. In the parable of the persistent widow, which is all about persistence and not giving up and knocking and knocking and knocking, Jesus ends the teaching of that parable and he says this in Luke 18:8. He says, when the Son of Man comes and he returns, will he find faith on earth? When Jesus comes, when he returns, will he find faith on earth? What will he find? He'll find faith. It depends on what it's in, what it's turned towards, what degree. And what my hope this morning for all of us, whether you're 6 or whether you're 66 or whether you're 106, if you're watching online, is to increase the level of our ability, of our faith in God. And more importantly, the God of our faith. Right? If God becomes bigger and, if you will, gooder, in our eyes, our faith grows. He's already all good. He's already all powerful. But our job through the power of the Spirit is to see him more as that in our lives and to push through the cynicism of the enemy and of culture and life that just makes us say he's not able and he's not good. Right? That's the job this morning. That's all we're going to do. Right? Jesus, you know what? I'll just get to the passage. Okay, Matthew 13, verses 53 through 58 here. This is when Jesus goes to his hometown. I don't know if you, depending on where you grew up or where you're from, like, I don't know what it's like if you go back to your hometown, all right? Some of you may be amazing. Some of you may be like, who you were when you were in middle school or high school is not who you are now, but every time you go back home, that's who you are, right? That's who you are. And I grew up most of my life in Maryville. And if I go back in the church that I grew up in Maryville, I am still 10th grade RD at that church. I'm a pastor, I'm a man, I have a mustache, right? I'm a serious person, clearly. Look at me. And yet, go back to my hometown, and it is very much RD who played soccer, RD who dated this person, RD who acted like this, right? And it's part of it, and it's just the nature of it. But the good is that people know something about you, so you can't quite get beyond your britches. The bad is that people know things about you, and so you can't quite sometimes move beyond things you want to. And so what happens when Jesus goes to his hometown, with his family, with his fame, what he's doing? Doesn't go well. Verse 53. When Jesus had finished these parables, he went away from there, and coming to his hometown, so Nazareth, he taught them in their synagogue. So they were astonished and said, "Where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works?" So highlight that word there, astonished. Is this not the carpenter's son? Here, just these are cynical questions that are now coming left and right. After the astonishment gives way to cynicism. Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother Mary? Are not his brothers James and Joseph and Simon and Judas? So now the disciples, his brothers, different guys. And are not all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things? And then verse 57, from the questions to the offense. And they took offense at him. What a movement of astonishment to questions, nothing wrong with questions, to provide it where they're going. But then it moves to they're offended by him, at his authority, at his teaching, at what he says, no doubt what he calls them to, and the cynicism and the doubts, they just creep in. That's what happens. And Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his own household. How sad. And then here's the haunting verse. Verse 58. And he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. My goodness me. Jesus, if you will, is paralyzed by their unbelief. Mark notes that he marvels at their unbelief. He can't believe how they don't believe. And it just reminds us of the humanity. He's going home to see his brothers and his mom. Not likely his dad has already passed away, which is why they talk about him the way that they do, the carpenter's son, right? So he's going to see his mom and his sisters and his family, or he's the homecoming, and he's teaching, right? He's in the synagogue. Luke records this in Luke chapter 4, where he unveils the scroll and sits down. They're like astonished. They cannot believe it. The word astonished there literally means to be thrown off course. Which is a good way to talk about encountering Jesus. He throws you off course. You better believe it. And he does for all of us at first, or at least initially, right? We all have stories of early on or going on a mission trip or having this moment where we are absolutely like going one way and then we are thrown off course by Jesus, right? That's what happens, right? But then like kind of, Tom Hanks in Big, we grow up and we replace astonishment with familiarity. But not a familiarity that's actually a worshipful one, a familiarity that leads to contempt and to offense and to cynicism. And that's what so often happens in deconstruction of faith. It is, he goes home, and I just anticipate him loving and seeing all these people and just thinking, where is your faith? And he's marveling, he's wondering like, what is happening here? And they're just saying, you're just this guy. You're so-and-so's son. How can you say these things? How can you do these things? And the cynical nature by which it's just this kind of doubt dripping with suspicion. That's what cynicism is. It's not just doubt. There's nothing wrong with doubt. Doubt can be a good thing. God can use doubt to strengthen your faith muscles. Right? All of us should have some doubt sometimes, but it's where those things go. Do they lead us to deeper love for Jesus, or they lead us away to deeper suspicion of God's motives, of God's character, of God's kindness? That's cynicism. And all of us, some of us may just be out and out cynics because that's what the world has taught us, but there's lies within all of us who are adults. This kind of level over time where just the cynical can just seep in, and there's just this kind of guard on us that's like, I can't give myself to all of that. He's just the carpenter's son. I can't let myself go there because of what it might mean. Can't do it. But you know what group of people remain astonished by things? Kids. Kids, I mean, the craziest things. The things that, as adults, you just feel like, how does that even, because we just get so used to seeing it, and it just astonishes them. It just is the wonder of the marveling. That's why I love Mark 10:15. Jesus says, I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it. Right? Because the people are bringing all the kids to Jesus. So you've got kind of a room like this, maybe not quite this size, and all the kids are coming up to spend time with Jesus, and the disciples, these serious professional people, right, are like, the kind of the bodyguards. Hey, don't mess with the Messiah. He's got things to do. He's got teaching, right? We don't have time. The kids are crying. The kids are yelling. He can't just kind of, how many times can he put this little, Simeon on his knee? Get them out of here. We've got the work of God to do here. And Jesus is like, you get behind me, you adults. Because if you do not, this is literal. If you want to take the Bible literally, let's pick this verse, okay? If you do not receive the kingdom of God like a child, you do not enter in. What does that mean? With astonishment, with wonder, with joy, with innocence. And maybe sometimes with a little misunderstanding. So be it. So be it, right? It's fine. Like I left this out earlier. I'll say it now in full confession. As Leah and I were praying last night, on top of her amazing thing that she said, what can God not do? She said, I just said, hey, anything you want to pray for? She said, dear Jesus, thank you for Jesus. Thank you for God. And thank you for Jesus and Elsa, my best friends. I said, well, yes, they're not the same person at all, but it's fine, right? All right, so there's the childlike spirit, but then of course you have to grow their theology. So I'm not saying that, okay? It's a posture of your heart though. It's a disposition. And most people, the older you get, you lose it. You lose it, right? And what we say often, just grow up. And Jesus seems to say, stay little, stay small. Keep coming to me. Keep coming to me. All right, the people in Jesus' hometown, right? They had a very adult-like spirit. But I bet there were kids there who saw him as he is. Now, what prohibits us from seeing more of Jesus, of his power? I really believe it's our expectancy. If you don't expect to see more of him, you will not see it. Right? If you expect to see more of it, you will see it. It is so interesting to me what Jesus says here. And he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Could he have done works there despite their unbelief? Yes. He can do anything he wants. But what is he trying to communicate? Mark notes that he pushes through, even there's a remnant of people there apparently, because he does heal some people, Mark notes. So Mark gives us more than Matthew does. But it's very few. Jesus could heal as many people as he wants, but there's something about faith when he doesn't perceive it. He says, no, the unbelief is too strong. I'm moving on. It's not here. He goes where he's wanted. He goes where he's welcomed. Now, yeah, he'll push through. You know he will, because he pushed through your heart. But let's not make this verse say something it doesn't say or try and cover it up, right? And he did not do many mighty works there. This is true, but you know what I'm saying here, I hope, because that was the sovereign plan of God for that to happen. Now, that's true. That's not what the text says. Matthew says he leaves town because they did not believe. God. How much was left on the table in Nazareth? How much of Jesus did Nazareth receive? This much. This much. Those in the podcast, it's very small. My hands are making small things. You're welcome. All right, and so what I want to do just briefly here is contrast kind of I really believe that a spirit of our age is a cynical spirit. I believe this. It permeates everything. It's what prevents prayerlessness. It what stops us from believing the best about people, and it is more pervasive than we think. And you put it whatever words you want to, but it is a doubt moving towards deep suspicion in the goodness of God and the ability of God to move in power. It's a cynical spirit. It's waking up every day with this question dominating your mind: did God really say? The first question of the whole Bible from the enemy is a cynical one. It's making you believe that God has multiple motives, that he's not letting you in on the truth. The enemy is the chief cynic of all. Did God really say? No, God's holding out on you. He's not good. He can't do it all. Just eat from that tree. There's an inside track to holiness and glory. Just take and eat it. Cynical. Cynical. And that's a spiritual warfare that we are in a battle with. So I just want to contrast a few words here that this will maybe be helpful for you. A cynical and a childlike faith. And it's kind of a continuum, okay? So there's going to be seasons where maybe we're in one more or the other, but I hope that we're always progressing towards the childlike, and it is a battle. It is challenging, right? So two words here: predictable versus possible. So the cynical is just everything's predictable. Everything's expected. Everything is just, I walk through my day and what's gonna happen is exactly what happens. There is no space for what's possible. Right? We used to, in Leela's room, we would kind of have the light off or on, and I'd be in bed with her, and then Emily would come by and turn the light off, which is outside the room, because I didn't want to get out of bed, turn the light off, because she liked the light being turned off, while she was in bed. I was like, how do we do this? So then the first time Emily did it, Leela goes, who did that? How did the light go off? And I was about to say, well, your mom. She goes, did God do that? I was like, yes. God did do that. God is able to turn lights off. And so then like the next few nights, she's like, did God do that? God did that. God did that. And then like eventually, she saw, like, kind of just figured out that she's like, Mom did that. I was like, well, God of course did it in the grand sense, Leela, but like, your mom did it. She was like, Mom did it? I thought it was God. I was like, well, okay, I don't know if that was parenting genius or not. Probably have to think about that one. But there is this sense in which for that moment for Leela, it was just like, of course God turned the light off. And then what so often happens with life is like, in one sense, yes, God did, but in another sense, it's like, well, we turned the light off. Right, we did it. Right, did God answer that prayer? I mean, yeah, I guess he did, but also we made it happen. Would he have answered it anyway? I mean, I don't know. Should we pray for this? I don't know. I think God's gonna heal him or not. Well, God is gonna heal him or not, but he still asks you to pray, not become cynical. And this the week that we had in this country right now, how so easy to fall into cynicism. There is no hope, and there's no possibility for things to change, for things to move. So we cannot be those people as Jesus people. Jesus is not a cynic, and who has more to be cynical about than him? Nobody knows the heart like he does. No one understands it like he does. If anybody walking around has a reason to be like, no way, you don't believe. And he does say that to sometimes people. It's like, you have no faith, right? He does do that. And yet he pushes through it, right? He's always calling people out of cynicism into hope and to trust, even though he doesn't have to. He's not a cynic about it. He's not. And so from predictable to just, well, of course the light turned off, right? We did it, to just what's possible. Maybe God did it. Maybe God did it. Why not God? That's what faith does. Secondly, through the motions, that's cynical, to just marveling. Motions to marveling. I mean, just the motions of faith, just going through it, and A and B and C and D, and how much of it is that, right? I know, it's almost over. It is. I know, 11 minutes, I promise, I know. I mean, this is just so important. Like, just so much of what we just think is the normal yoke of life is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm not saying that week's not going to be exhausting because we live in a fallen world with thorns and thistles, but there is this sense of like, is there a marveling and a wondering still in your faith? As Rick talked about last week so wonderfully, can Jesus surprise you? Do you have a faith that has the ability to be surprised by God? Or is there just this sense of, well, it's expected? When was the last time you just stopped and marveled at the wonder, the glory, and the beauty, the majesty of God? Is there just a going through the motions in your life, in your day? Just drudgery versus delight. Drudgery will kill you. It will. Resigned versus persistent. So just this resignation to the world, right? Just this sense of, and I can understand this, because the world just beats the tar out of you. It does. It's easy to be resigned. The older you get, the more you see, the more you grow up, and the more you're just like, God, there's so much. It's just like, I just can't take it anymore. Instead of being persistent and just pressing in and saying, no, there's more. I'm going to keep knocking, going to keep asking. Right? It's not the parable of the resigned widow. It's the parable of the persistent widow. But basically, Jesus is like, I'm annoyed, so I'm going to answer it. Just keep knocking. Just keep asking. In a sense, of course, God answers every single one of your prayers. He does. But the enemy just wants to just send in there and be like he's holding out on you. If he really loved you, he would heal you. If he really loved you, he would deliver you. If he really loved you, this thing would not have happened to you. If he really loved you, whatever it may be, and just it's drip by drip by drip by. Did God really say? Does God really care? Does God really know? Is God really able? He is. He is. And one of the fights of faith in the spiritual armor that we have is to believe in his goodness and to believe and to just persist in trusting that he is able and he listens to us. He listens. I'm not sure how long the people of Israel cried out in Egypt, but for a long time. And then one day God heard, even though he'd always heard, and he moved in power. Last couple here, 2 ways for questions. Nothing wrong with questions. If you're a Christian, you should have questions of God. Nothing wrong with that. But there's critical questions and there are curious questions, right? There's people that are critical for the sake of being critical. Ugh. And there are people that have serious but curious questions wanting to lead. They want answers. Do you have a faith that's curious, that's wondering, that's thinking these things, or do you have one that is just critical? It just is. There are more here. I have to cut them off for time. Last one, cautious versus fearless. Let's get back to kids here. I mean, yesterday, I always talk about Leela, but she's an insane animal. And yesterday, she was jumping off the couch all day, and she just kept saying, move back, like for me to catch her. Move back, move back. And I mean, she's like, you know, I feel like on the front row, and I'm moving back. I'm like, you cannot jump that. You will die. You cannot jump that far. Move back. And she'll just try and jump. I have to like run and grab her. And she's like, I did it. I'm like, you can't. Absolutely insane. You are insane. Like she wants to jump in the pool without floaties. This girl cannot swim. I can do it. Absolutely fearless. Now, somewhat of a moron. She's 3, right? But she's fearless. Right? God will take a fearless moron over a cautious, smart person. Just read the Bible. Look at Peter. Moron. Absolute moron. I will never deny you. You will totally deny me. I will never. Get behind me, Satan. Founder of the church. Jesus can work with morons. I mean it. My God, right? Thank God. Thank God. Oh man, the more I follow Jesus, the more I'm like, I have no clue. I have no clue. I thought I had a sense. I thought I had a nugget. And yes, I'm growing and my faith is growing, but I'm like, I don't understand. Oh, man. Some of you, we just need to take the governor off your faith. Take it off. You are the person that's preventing God from doing more in your life, not God, right? You are the Nazareth because you do not believe. You do not have faith. You do not trust. You believe the lies of the enemy over the truth of who God is. And it doesn't mean you take your brain out of it and you move your brain over here. No, thank you, right? When I came back to Christianity in college after a long season of doubt, I needed the intellectual nature of Christianity more than ever. But it's not just your mind. It is your mind and a heart that is alive together. Right? Look at the ways that Jesus is doing so many things through faith. Look what he's looking for. I'm just going to go back to Matthew 8 and 9 and briefly look at these people that are coming before Jesus. And behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him saying, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. And Jesus stretched out his hands, touched him and saying, I will be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him. Lord, if you're willing, I am willing. Be clean. The faith of the centurion. Right, Lord, I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word and my servant will be healed. Jesus says, truly, I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. Jesus heals the paralytic when they open up the ceiling of this room, right? And Jesus saw their faith. He saw the faith of the friends, and he said to the paralytic, your sins are forgiven. Your sins are forgiven because of someone else's faith. That to me is an insane verse. What your faith can do for someone else's salvation. Your faith, right? The woman who reaches out and touches Jesus in Matthew 9, she says, I quote, if only I touch his garment, I will be made well. Jesus turned and seeing her, he said, take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well. A few verses later, as Jesus passed on from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying aloud, have mercy on us, son of David. When he entered the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, do you believe I am able to do this? And they said to him, yes, Lord. According to your faith, be it done to you. And their eyes were opened. Absolutely just amazing, right? Jesus heals the man with his son demon-possessed, right? Mark chapter 9. The man says, if you can do anything, Lord, have compassion on us. Jesus says to him, if you can, all things are possible for one who believes. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, I believe, help my unbelief. Let that all be our prayer. That's the prayer of a child. I believe, help my unbelief. I want to be a child again, right? I want to be a child. I want to be, right, this beautiful kind of Neverland reality, yet right in the midst of this world. This is God's heart, right? This is God's heart. Help my unbelief, right? The people that shouldn't get it, they get it. They get it. The people that should not get it, they get it. That's the power of faith. All Jesus needs is a mustard seed. That's all he needs, right? You're not saved by the strength of your faith or the size of your faith. You're saved by the focus of your faith, Jesus. Just look at him. If you're like, I don't have any faith, you look at him. You don't need to just find some muscles you don't have today. You just need to look at him and say, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. I believe, help my unbelief, right? What can faith do? What could deeper faith, greater faith in the goodness and the power of God do in your life? What could it do? What could it do? Let's see what it's done. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for. It's Hebrews 11. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. For by it the people of old received their commendation. By faith we understand the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made of the things that are visible. By faith Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteous, God commending him by accepting his gifts. And through his faith, though he died, he still speaks. What an amazing verse. And without faith, it is impossible to please God. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. By faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear, constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing, as the King James used to say, whither he went. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents, while Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise, for he was looking forward to the city that has foundation, whose designer and builder is God. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, yikes, were born descendants, as many as the stars of heaven and as many as the insurmountable grains of sand by the seashore. All of us and thousands and thousands and thousands more. These all died in faith, not receiving the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they'd gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. And he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. By faith, Isaac invoked future blessings on Jacob and Esau. By faith, Jacob, when dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph, bowing in worship over the head of his staff. By faith, Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave directions concerning his bones. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents. By faith, Moses, when he'd grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated. By faith, he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king, for he endured. By faith, he kept the Passover. By faith, the people crossed the Red Sea as on dry land, but the Egyptians, when they attempted to do so, were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they'd been encircled. By faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish. But what more shall I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Women received back their dead. Some were tortured. Others suffered mocking and flogging, even chains. They were stoned. They were sawn in two. They were killed with the sword. They went about in skins and goats, destitute, of whom the world was not worthy, wandering about in deserts and mountains and dens and caves. And all these, though commended through their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us, that apart from us they should not be made perfect. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so easily, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and the perfecter of our faith. Let us do it. Let us do it, right? You stand up, raise up, right? We are looking to him. We are looking to him, and he is looking to us. Will I find faith? Will I find faith? Look what it can do. Look what God's able to do. Let's go.